Hey everyone, welcome to Games Are Fun, your weekly video game podcast. My name is Luke Armstrong, I am your host. Today is April 27th, 2026, and I'm really excited for today's episode because I'm going to be talking all things Marathon. It's not going to be a full review of Marathon. The game's been out for a few months. I've put in several hours into Marathon, and since the podcast has returned, I've wanted to talk about it. So today's episode is going to be all about Marathon, kind of my experience with it. There are lots of things that I love about Marathon, but there are also some things that could be better in my opinion. So that's what today's topic is going to be. But before we get into talking about Marathon, there's a couple things I wanted to go over at the top of the show here. First off, thank you to everyone who tuned in to last week's episode. After 5 years of not doing the podcast, it was quite nerve-wracking coming back to record an episode. But it meant a lot to have you guys listen to it, to actually see that people played it, and having the analytics come in. It's like, okay, my audience is still out there. So thank you so much to those of you who also sent me DMs and said, hey, checked out the episode. Really appreciated getting all of your messages. It brought a huge smile to my face. So shout out to all of you. And I also kind of thought it was interesting. I was doing a little bit of cleanup on the podcast feed, and I saw that the last episode before the hiatus was 127. And I actually realized a couple things. First, I went all the way back and realized that technically episode 2 and 3 are like lost media. They're gone. I don't know what happened to them, but back in the day when I started the podcast, I hosted it on SoundCloud. And for some reason, when I transferred that hosting over to a site called Anchor, it just didn't transfer episode 2 and 3. And I never really was bothered by trying to figure out how to get it over. And I don't even know if those recordings still exist. If they did, they would be on like my old MacBook. So shout out to those people who got to hear the true episode 2 and 3 of Games Are Fun. I couldn't tell you what they were about, but they're gone. They no longer exist. And so I thought it would kind of make more sense to go back and like renumber all the episodes, because I also noticed that when we did review specials back in the day, is we didn't like give those episodes a number. We just called it like Death Stranding review, and then in parentheses put special. So this is actually episode 138 of Games Are Fun, which is crazy to me that there's been that many episodes. It kind of was like, damn, I've recorded a lot of content. And same with like Adam and Steven and Garrett. Like those guys have all recorded a lot of shows over the years. So yeah, it was kind of just this like trip down memory lane for me of just like going through all the episodes and, you know, retitling them and just kind of seeing all the titles of the previous episodes. It kind of brought back all these memories of like, oh, I totally remember that discussion we had on that episode. And it's funny because before I did that, you know, it's almost like a blur. There's obviously episodes that stand out to me, like the Last of Us review and the Death Stranding review. But there are some episodes that we did back in the day that had some really fun topics and generated some really good discussions. So I'm really excited to kind of see where things go in this new kind of revised version of the podcast. Last week's episode, I mentioned that the podcast is going to release on a weekly schedule every Monday morning, and a couple things have changed. I also mentioned the YouTube channel, and previously we used to, like, I would say near the tail end of Games Are Fun, the 2018-2021 era, near the end, we actually started recording video versions of our podcast and uploading them to YouTube. And I mentioned previously that I don't know what I'm going to be doing with the YouTube channel. And I thought it was just going to be this separate thing that's going to have like maybe short form video, totally unrelated to the podcast. And then I've kind of discovered that because it's been so long since I've stopped podcasting, like Google Podcasts no longer exists. It all just exists on YouTube now. So you can just like upload your RSS feed onto YouTube. It'll automatically upload episodes to YouTube. So if you're listening on YouTube, shout out to you. It's kind of crazy because I uploaded the whole backlog of Games Are Fun onto YouTube, and there's been views. I don't know where they're coming from. it says that they're being like the analytics are showing that the clicks are coming from being recommended certain episodes in like the sidebar and stuff like that. So that's kind of crazy to me that these old ass episodes are being listened to. And some of the ones are like at least like from like year 2, like 2019, maybe 2020, they're getting like the most views. And it's funny because some of them are totally unrelated to anything that's happening in gaming. Like they're very topical to whatever news was happening in 2019. And so I just thought that was kind of an interesting kind of tidbit that I wanted to share. With that being said, I do still plan on using YouTube to have like some short form video content in the future, but I am gonna, obviously you can catch the podcast on YouTube now going forward, which is pretty cool. Now before we get into talking all about Marathon and all the things that I love about that game, I wanted to just pick a little bone about something that I've been seeing on the internet. And honestly, it's something that I probably shouldn't even give that much attention, but it's like, it's grinding my gears and I got to get it off my chest. And that is the obsession with IGN and their review scores for games. Like, I don't know what it is exactly, but every time I click on anything IGN reviews, whether it's a game or a movie, the comments section is insane to me. It actually makes me want to stab my eyes because it is so frustrating and annoying seeing the same comments over and over again. Now, I know what you're thinking. A lot of comments, like, first of all, IGN, they get their fair share of hate. Sometimes it's warranted. They're the biggest video game entertainment news website out there. And so, yeah, there's always going to be this like hordes of people coming in and just bashing everything that IGN does. But and then there's another side to it of like, there's probably all these bot accounts. They're just commenting the same shit over and over and over again. But the thing that I'm having a hard time with is people's obsession with like the review scores. So for example, Marathon, it kind of had like a review in progress because it's kind of like a games with service. You kind of have to play it over several weeks to kind of get that full experience with it before you put a review score on it. And it got a 9 out of 10, I believe, by IGN. And then Crimson Desert, high expectations with that game. It was one of the biggest games coming out this year. A lot of people were really hyped for it coming out. And then they saw IGN gave it a 6 out of 10. And man, people lost their freaking minds. They were in the comments being like, saying the same old shit that they always say. And it's like, you gave She-Hulk this score. How, like, we obviously can't take your word for it. And the thing I want to talk about briefly is just how dumb this whole conversation really is in general of review game scores. And it drives me crazy because the thing that I think most people understand this, but a review is like somebody's opinion on this game, right? Like, also, IGN is not a person. There are so many different people at IGN all around the entire world in all these different like offices for IGN. They're reviewing these games, and all those people are going to have different takes, right? What I like is not necessarily going to be what another person likes. And I just hate to see the constant like barrage of like negativity in the comments section. Like people are just like going crazy for any time IGN gives a review score. They're frothing at the mouth to comment and be like, fuck IGN. And it's just kind of crazy to me. For example, I need to bring up Saros. Came out just, is it out yet? The reviews are out. I don't know if it's out by the time I'm actually recording this, but they gave it a 7 out of 10, which is officially good on their scale. And, it's a little bit lower than some other outlets. Like on Metacritic, I think it was sitting like an average of 88 out of 100. But there's all these comments like, can't take IGN seriously. Marathon 9, Crimson Desert 6, Sorrow 7. IGN, are you okay? 7GN strikes again. Nah, it's definitely not a 7. It's more around an 8. Others gave it a 9 out of 10. What the hell, IGN? Metacritic gave it 8 point. You guys don't know what you're talking about. Did we play the same game? Doesn't matter. IGN is, and again, I'm not here to defend IGN. There's lots of things I hate about IGN, but like, it's just the constant comments about like obsession with like a number for the video game score. Like, who actually cares? People don't even listen to the comments of the games or like the critiques or, you know, what people enjoyed, what people hated. They just go straight to that number. And if it's like lower than 8, they're like, fuck this is bullshit. How could you guys do this? And it's like, half the time these reviews that come out before the game's even out, and people haven't even played the game, so they don't even know what they're talking about. They're just going off of purely what they've seen in trailers or their hype for the game. And if it doesn't match that in a review score, then, you know, it's just total anarchy in the comment section. So again, kind of a pointless conversation in the sense that I know a lot of people listening to this show don't really care about that kind of stuff, or they see it exactly how I see it. They don't give it the time or energy. And I don't either. It's not like I'm going and replying and arguing with these people in the comments, but it's just like, why can't we just like enjoy like discussions around games? Why does it have to constantly be this like these scores that we're like obsessed with? It's very interesting to me. And so I think it kind of made me think, if I ever do a full review on one of these episodes, I'm not going to really give a score to a game. I might, you know, put a score on it like out of 5 just to kind of give people a feel, because, you know, number scores do kind of can tell somebody in terms of like, is it average, is it mediocre, or is it excellent, is it a masterpiece? I understand how those numbers can like help people kind of decide what a game is, but it's just crazy to me. And so I wanted to point that out. It was something that was grinding my gears, and I just needed to get it off my chest. Okay. So thank you for listening to that rant. Now let's get into the topic of the show, and that is Marathon. So Marathon, of course, Bungie's first, honestly, title for a long time. They've been in the world of Destiny for years and years and years. Obviously, prior to that, they released and developed the Halo games. And I was really excited going into Marathon. I think when it was initially shown off as this extraction shooter, when that news dropped way back in the day, and a lot of people kind of were like, ooh, I don't know about this. I kind of was one of those people, because I was hoping for, I don't honestly know what I was hoping for. I think I was just looking forward to like a single player first person shooter that felt like Halo, that felt like Destiny in terms of the guns and how they shoot. But, you know, I also kind of thought it was like a single player first person shooter, like those really don't have legs these days. You can maybe release one alongside a multiplayer mode, but like, I mean, Call of Duty has not included single player campaigns for the longest time. So once I kind of switched my mind and was like, you know what, this is a multiplayer game. I need to like get that idea of like this single player first person shooter experience out of my head. I was kind of like, okay, I think I'm going to be on board with this. And then as we got closer to release, I just was obsessed with Marathon's art style. Like, this game is so sick in terms of just how the world looks. I love all the bright neon colors. I love how the guns look, this kind of like futuristic, cyber kind of world that is kind of mixed with like really, yeah, like I said, bold colors and stuff like that. It just was totally my vibe. And I kind of decided to pre-order the game, and that's something that is quite rare for me, because I honestly have not pre-ordered a game, I think, since I used to buy like physical video games back in the day, like a collector's steelbook edition. I think honestly the last one I pre-ordered was probably like Death Stranding, like the steelbook for PS4. And that was probably the last game I pre-ordered, because in today's world, you kind of just want to see how games are. You don't, unless you like know for a fact that is going to be your jam, or it's a sequel to a game that you really liked. If it's a new IP, you kind of want to see what people are saying about it before you dive into it completely, or or because games are so expensive, you want to wait for a sale. And that was also partially part of the reason why I jumped on Marathon is it was a cheaper game. It was only like $50 Canadian. And I think right now it's actually gone on its first sale. I think it's dropped down to like 20% off or something like that. So I highly recommend you pick it up if you were interested. It is on sale on Steam, PlayStation, and Xbox right now. But I guess for those of you who are like, what the hell is Marathon? I'm not tapped in, Luke, like you are to the video game world. Marathon is an extraction shooter, and it's basically played in trios, so teams of 3 primarily. You can play it solo, and they also have introduced a couple duos modes. But similar to like Overwatch or Apex Legends, you kind of have these characters that you stick to. In Marathon, they call them shells, and each shell has different abilities that kind of you can use to your advantage out in the battlefield, so to speak. So there are 7 shells in total. 6 are only available if you're playing in trios, but if you're wanting to play solo, there's a shell called Rook. And we'll kind of get into Rook later because I've had my own experiences with Rook. But you have Destroyer, Assassin, Recon, Vandal, Thief, and Triage. Obviously, someone like Triage, they're providing med support. Someone like Recon, they're exactly what it sounds like. They're providing recon on the battlefield, pinging, being able to ping enemies in a certain area. Yeah, I honestly haven't played. I think actually I have played as all of the shells, but I have totally just stuck to Recon because once I kind of got stuck on Recon, I was like, it was really hard to play other shells because I got so kind of used to Recon's playstyle. You can kind of throw out this little spider drone that will kind of go and kind of climb onto enemies, and then a grenade will explode. And I found that was really useful for flushing out NPCs in tight areas or inside buildings and stuff like that. If you come across another team, it was really easy to kind of flush out people with that drone. So once I kind of got stuck on Recon, I stayed on Recon. And so alongside the shells, you also have a few maps to work with. You have Outpost, Dire Marsh, and Perimeter, as well as Cryo Archive, which is kind of like the end game event for the season. It's kind of like the final. You basically have to reach a certain level. You have with all your contracts. There's some requirements to kind of meet before you go and play that level. And I've actually, as of this recording, I've only had one opportunity to play it. So I am not a Marathon expert by any means, but the game's been out for a few months and I've probably put about 30 hours into it. And I've had a really good time. Now, the things I really wanted to talk about were, first of all, the game's art style is insane to me. I am obsessed with it. I remember from the very first night, I plugged my headphones in, and that is definitely the most optimal way to play because this game's sound design is extremely trippy. I felt like I was tripping on acid while playing sometimes because it was like the loading screens are really trippy. They have crazy kind of colors and transitions going on and weird visuals that make you feel like, what am I looking at here? But it's my vibe. I really dig it. And so immediately just seeing the presentation when I jumped on the game for the first time, I was like, okay, I'm hooked. And then getting into an actual match, shooting the guns, it was like, okay, it's good to be back in a Bungie shooter again. The guns just feel incredible to shoot. I've had the opportunity to kind of pretty much experience all the weapons that are available. I'm sure there are a few I have yet to try, but I am a big fan of pretty much all of them. There's not one weapon I would prefer over another. There are some that are a little bit slower, or, you would prefer to have just a simple AR or something like that. But I would say most of the time the guns are totally up my alley. And yeah, the biggest thing was kind of going back into playing a multiplayer game again, because I enjoy multiplayer games, but back in the 360 days, I would jump on Xbox Live into a Call of Duty match and just chat with whoever was in the lobby, and I would kind of make friends with people on Xbox Live and talk to people from all over the world, and it was pretty cool. And I was like a teenager doing that. And since I've gone into my adult age, I have been almost like not afraid to get in there, but just I'm much more introverted. I just want to play, just want to chill by myself. And so Marathon was kind of forcing me to get on mic and talk with people, and that was really fun. For the first few weeks, I had this infuriating problem where I couldn't get in-game voice chat to work. And so when I was playing with Garrett, aka LP Panther, when we were squatting up, we'd have to use Discord chat. And it was kind of annoying because I wanted to see how this proximity chat worked. And since I got the voice chat working, I will say the proximity chat is never really a thing because I never come across enemies who use it. Anytime that I'm hearing people on mic, it's on my own team. No one ever goes into like the prox chat and talks to me. At least I've never had that encounter, and I've played dozens and dozens of matches. So that I do find interesting, but I think there could be some fun elements. I've seen lots of videos of people coming across other teams, and instead of fighting each other, they get on mics and they actually like work together. So I have basically been playing mainly trios, but occasionally I've been playing solo. And so there's a couple ways of going solo. You can actually load into a solo lobby where it's just you and a bunch of other single players dropping on a map. You get your loot and you try to extract him within the 25 minutes or whatever it is. That is pretty fun, but it can be extremely challenging. If you almost have to go in like very stealth. You can't make a lot of noise. You can't just start shooting NPCs because basically as soon as you start shooting your gun, you're alerting the entire map of your location. And within a few minutes, enemies will be making their way to you. And so that's kind of fun. It can definitely work to your advantage sometimes when you're not the one shooting and you hear somebody and you scope out another player and find them and get an easy kill. But it's sometimes hard when you're trying to complete these contracts and you're just wanting to do it solo just so you can go get in, get it done, and extract so you get the contract completed. And those can be a bit frustrating when they do require you to kind of engage in combat with the NPCs. Now, there's another mode which is going in as a rook. And basically with rook, you are joining in on trios as a single player. So you kind of have some abilities that allow you to kind of maybe... Like, rook is definitely an overpowered shell compared to the others, but that is designed because you are going 1v3 a lot of times. And you're also dropping in on a map where players have already spent a few minutes doing things. So you kind of like drop in, I think at like sometimes the 10 minute mark or something like that. And you can kind of just like, fuck shit up with if you know what you're doing. But a lot of times it's very challenging because you are going against like 3 players, and that just you get overrun by them and it's game over. So yeah, I basically really enjoy Marathon. The cycle is great of just like every night just kind of jumping on, doing a few rounds, getting some loot, and then calling it a day. And I will say in the first month, like basically from like March until April, I was really interested in the game, wanted to keep playing, just wanted to get more and more loot, unlock new areas that are locked. And I kind of felt in April that kind of energy starting to die down a little bit. And that doesn't mean that I dislike the game by any means. It just kind of means that it's kind of losing its magic, I guess, because once you kind of play on these 3 maps after a while, you kind of know the general areas, and it can be frustrating. You can have like a contract that you're trying to complete, and let's say it's a contract that you have to complete in a single run. So that means you basically drop in on the map, you do all the objectives, and you have to successfully exfil without dying. If you complete all the tasks and you're on the way to exfil and another team kills you, too bad. There aren't always ones that you have to successfully exfil. Some it's just like you have to do in a single run, you have to complete all these tasks. But sometimes the tasks are like, go to this area and then you have to go all the way across the map to this area and do something. Then you got to go all the way back to the other side. And it's kind of like you're running all around. And that can be challenging because you're going to encounter tons of NPCs and you're going to encounter other players. And so it does add that challenge to completing the contracts. I will say that some contracts really straightforward, and then there was other contracts that you have to complete that are just like very confusing in the sense that you don't know exactly where you need to go. It'll tell you a general building, but not exactly what you have to do. You have to like read the contract and it'll be like, on the second floor of maintenance, you need to upload this data drive. And it's like, okay, I'm in maintenance. I'm upstairs, but there's multiple rooms. Like, where do you go? And since launch, they've done a ton of updates and patches where they've improved some of these things to be a little bit easier and kind of show up on your map in a way that's like, okay, here's my objective. I know what I need to do here in this location. But then, yeah, in those first few weeks, it was honestly quite frustrating with some of the tasks. And I will say, Bungie's done a great job at just continuously updating the game with patches in a way that not just improves gameplay by adding more, let's say, patch kits or weapon drops in certain areas, but they also have changed some of the UI, because some of the UI, like, you're in the menus a lot in this game, right? Because it's an extraction shooter. The whole goal is to drop in, get as much loot as you can, and get out. And sometimes you need to like kind of read, what is this loot that I'm collecting? And it's kind of overwhelming at first because there's so many different things. There's weapons, there's valuables that you can sell. There are mods for your guns. There's kind of mods for your shell. They call them implants that give you abilities. There's patch kits, there's shields, there's all these different things. And then there's also things that are almost used as currency. So you have the actual in-game currency that you can use in the armory to like purchase, weapons for your loadouts and stuff like that. And they also have a whole nother system of like items that you use as currency. And that's another one of my frustrations, is because unless you like go into a match, you're like, okay, I need to get a bunch of, this specific material because I need this material to upgrade. Like with the different factions, each faction has different materials that you need to use to upgrade and unlock different things in the armory. And it's not like every time I'm dropping in on the map that I'm collecting all those items. And so it can be a bit, annoying that you have to kind of like drop in with the effort, or making the conscious effort of like, I need to make sure that I'm grabbing these things while I'm in here because I'm running low, or I need, 10 more in order to make this new upgrade in this faction. So that was one of my gripes. And then another thing that can be extremely frustrating is, obviously it is an extraction shooter, so it has its moments where you can gain a ton of loot, have a really good run where you make lots of kills and you get lots of loot and you get out of there. And then there's other times where you just have shitty luck, and there was a night where me and LP Panther were playing, and I kid you not, back to back runs, we were dying. Like, we could not have a successful exfil. And there were some matches we would last like 2 minutes. And then there are other matches where we would almost get to exfil and then we would die. And so when you have nights like that, it's kind of like, okay, I've played this game for 2 hours tonight and we have literally made zero progress on anything. And that is kind of where some contracts, like being able to complete the contracts without having to successfully exfil, those ones are really great because it feels like you're still kind of accomplishing something. You're still gaining XP to level your account up, but it can be a little bit frustrating. But on the contrary, when you have those nights where you're just like getting back to back matches where things are going your way, it can be really magical. So that's really fun. Now, the other thing that I wanted to talk about was Cryo Archive. And I only had one run on this, and it's extremely challenging because instead of like these locations on planets or whatever, you're actually on the Marathon ship. So everything's indoors, everything's tight quarters. And so it gives it a bit of a different feel in terms of like exploring the environment. And I really liked that aspect of it. Now, the team I was with did a great job. We ran through so many other teams. We killed probably like 3 other teams. I was getting great loot. And then we encountered a problem because in that level, in order to exfil, you actually have to complete certain things and gain your security clearance. And we didn't really do that. I think it was because it was a lot of our first times in the map. And so we needed security clearance level 3 in order to actually unlock exfilling. And we were stuck at security clearance 2. And so the whole map or match went by, 20 some minutes or whatever. And we just died because the timer run out. We could not exfil. So all this amazing loot that I gathered was just gone. And it sucks because to get into Cryo Archive, you need a loadout of a value at least 5K. And because I've been kind of like primarily playing on, Perimeter and Dire Marsh, which are the kind of, low threat and then medium threat levels, the loot on those levels are not crazy. And so it's not like you're getting these insane guns that are worth a lot where you can just like cycle through them. I mean, if I played more frequently, I'm sure I would have a whole armory full of high loot that I could run, but I literally used up my only loot that could get me into Cryo Archive, and then I didn't really have enough to get up to that 5K threshold, and so that's kind of part of the reason why I haven't ran it again. And so there is incentive to grind and to get loot so that I can play that again, but it is a little bit frustrating. I wish they cycled in, like, they have these sponsored kits, and basically these sponsored kits are they kind of rotate them in the armory every single day, and each one will be free. It'll just give you like a simple gray gun and a few patch kits and stuff like that, some ammo. Like, it's a very small loadout, and you almost kind of start, at least I start leaning towards wanting to use sponsored kits instead of bringing in my own loot, because I don't want to lose any of my loot, right? I could, totally fill up my loadout with all these awesome guns and equipment and mods attached to my guns, and then I could jump into a match and then boom, I'm dead in like 2 minutes because some character caught me off guard, and now I lost all that loot. And it's just like, okay. And that is the extraction shooter genre for you. And it's just a genre that I am not super used to, and I think I do like the cycle of that. You kind of have to learn that's like, your loot, you never really own your loot. You're kind of just borrowing your loot. And you almost think of it as like, okay, I lost all this good loot, but I just, I gave it to another player in a sense. And there's going to be a moment where I take on another player and I kill them and I get all their loot, and they're bummed that they lost all. Like, that's just part of the cycle. So you have to kind of accept that. Because if you get attached to any of your loot, like, you're not going to have a good time. It's almost like with a Souls-like game, you have to just know that you're going to die a lot, and there's going to be some bosses that might take you 20, 30 tries to complete. And then there might be some bosses that you can first try and kill them. So it kind of ranges, but you have that in the back of your mind of like, okay, I need to accept that I'm going to die a lot. And it's kind of like that with Marathon. And so, yeah, to kind of close out my thoughts here, I really like Marathon. It's a really dope game. I love a lot of the art style and the game's story. I actually even went back and played the OG Marathon. It's like a boomer shooter from back in the day, like this 90s, Doom-like shooter. And it was really fun, but it was kind of cool seeing some of these like enemies and some of the elements that were in that OG PC Marathon game kind of make its way into the world of this new iteration of Marathon. And so that was really cool. I highly recommend, if you're on the fence, you love multiplayer games, you like first-person shooters, definitely give it a try. It's definitely not for everybody. I can understand why this wouldn't be everybody's cup of tea, but if you've ever enjoyed even playing battle royales like Fortnite or Warzone or anything like that, I guarantee you are going to have some fun with Marathon, especially if you squad up with some people that you know and get on voice chat. If you want to play solo, I will say it's probably not going to have legs for you. Like, you're going to play a few times and probably get bored, because the experience for me is really playing with other people and squatting up. I played a lot with LP Panther, and those have been the most fun I played with the game, is when I'm on mic talking with people. So yeah, that's kind of my thoughts around Marathon. I wanted to share them because it's a game that I've been playing lately, and it's one of the few games I, like I said, pre-ordered, let alone bought day one. And so yeah, it's been really fun, and I'm excited to kind of see future seasons, what the drops are going to be like. Like, once they add new shells, once they add new maps, I could constantly see myself coming back to the game and seeing what's new, get my fix for it, and then kind of bouncing off to playing something else. So yeah, that is basically going to do it for today's episode. I hope you guys enjoyed me rambling on about Marathon. I did want to give one update about episodes. And so I've talked about the podcast being a weekly episode on Monday. That is still going to be the plan. Mondays are going to be the main show, but occasionally, because the podcast is now around that, 35 to 45 minute range, there are opportunities for me to kind of release maybe multiple times a week. And I think that will likely happen, because I got all my credentials kind of lined up again to start receiving review game codes and being able to actually review or play games for review. And I've already acquired a few indie games that I've been playing on Steam, and I know that I would like to talk about those. And indies are coming out every week, and so I might not be able to wait a whole week to be able to talk about one indie game, and then a whole nother week goes by before I can kind of devote an episode to this other indie game. So occasionally you might see the odd episode pop up. I think primarily if an episode is going to be, releasing on not a Monday, it's going to be like an indie review or something like that. So I already have a couple in the works. Look forward to those coming out in the next few weeks here. And that's pretty much all I have for today's episode of Games Are Fun. Thank you so much for listening to today's episode. Make sure you leave a review on Apple or Spotify if you're listening on those platforms. Make sure you're following the show, and also leave a comment. I saw that Spotify actually has the ability to leave comments now, which was not a thing that existed in the first iteration of the podcast. So please leave a comment. I checked those out, and I think in the future we're kind of maybe going to bring back question of the week. Oh yeah, one other thing that I wanted to update is the Discord is back up. It's a new Discord channel, as the last one closed. And so if you're looking for an invite link to the Discord, you could probably find it in this episode's description. Over there on the Discord, we kind of talk about the episode, give topic suggestions, and eventually I'm going to start introducing question of the week. And that's probably where I'm going to ask the question and read out your guys' responses. So, all right. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll talk to you guys next week. See you later.